Welcome to my second video of normalization in database management system. Last video we have discussed about UNF, unnormalized form, and the first NF. Now we'll go for the second NF. Before entering into the second NF, second normal form in database management system, we have to clear few concepts such as primary key. What is primary key? Then second, dependency. That means all the non-prime attributes must fully dependent on prime key. That concept we have to clear. Then we have to see that it must satisfy the first NF. The relation must be satisfied the first NF before entering into the second NF. Now come to these slides, you will see the examples of second NF. In second NF, the definition says a relation is said to be in second NF if and only if it is already in first NF and each and every attribute fully depends on the primary key of the relation. Here primary key is coming. In other words, if a table has some attributes which is not dependent on primary key of the table, then it is not in second NF. So to satisfy second NF, a relation must clear this particular anomalies. That anomalies, that problems we call that it must clear out, or it must be clear enough that primary key and dependency must be here the problems. What is primary key? The definition of primary key we can define in this way, that primary key is a key attribute which helps to make each and every record in the relation distinct. That means distinct means here it should not be repeated. If you will take one primary key, for example, employees table, employee number or employee ID is a primary key. This particular attribute will help to make each and every record of relation employees is distinct, unique, or it should not be repeated. So each and every record will be unique in this particular relation. Now primary key helps to make each and every record distinct. Then second part is dependency. If we will select one primary key of a table, that means we cannot take multiple primary key here in this table. Primary key always be in a relation will be unique, only one. So we cannot take multiple primary keys in a relation. So when we'll take one attribute or a set of attributes as a primary key, that means all the rest of the keys, here key means attributes. So all the non-key attributes will be fully dependent on primary key. Take this example, it is as given: employee ID, employee name, month, sales, and bank ID. In previous slides we have seen in first NF, it is about the atomic values. Each and every cell must have atomic values. But here we'll see, first of all, if it is satisfied with atomic values, each and every cell must have values. It is already there. That means first NF is already satisfied. The second NF says that these relations must have a primary key. Now, which attribute will help to make itself as a primary key? So here we can take any attributes which makes distinctly or identify the each and every records distinctly. So here if we take employee ID as a primary key, then all the keys, employee name, month, sales, and bank ID, these all four attributes must fully dependent on employee ID. Without employee ID, there should not be any existence of these values. That is called dependency. Here we call dependency, or dependent means fully dependence. There is a two types of dependence we have. one is partial dependence and one is fully dependency, and here dependent means fully dependency. So all these non-keys must be fully dependent on primary key or primary attribute. So this is how we can make. Now if you'll compare previous slides, you will find bank ID is a primary key to a bank details, like bank ID, bank name. So bank name will be fully dependent on bank ID. And similarly, employee name is fully dependent on employee ID. Employee name is fully dependent on employee ID. Sales also depend on employee ID. Months also fully dependent on employee ID. And bank ID also fully dependent on employee ID. So now these four, that is employee name, month, sales and bank ID, all these attributes are fully dependent on employee ID except bank name. Why? Bank name is associated with, fully dependent with bank ID. So here one dependency is there, and here a set of attributes are dependent on employee ID. So in this particular scenario, you can take bank ID as a primary key for these two columns or attributes, and here rest of the attributes, employee ID can be treated as a primary key. But in this particular relation, we cannot take both employee ID and bank ID as a primary key. That's why we can split this table into two tables. This is called decompositions of relation. So here decompositions means we are splitting a whole table or relation into two tables, and there should not be any disturbance among the dependency. Now bank ID is fully dependent on employee ID, it is exist, and bank name is fully dependent on the bank ID, it is also exist. Here you will find bank ID is repeated in both relations, sub-relations. Why? It is to preserve or to sustain the dependency. So this dependency is there, but bank name is not fully dependent on employee ID. That's why we have split it from this sub-relations to these relations. This is how we can decompose in second NF. If you will find number of attributes which can represent themselves as a primary key, we have to split it. Now you can take, for example, A, B, C, D, E, F. These are all attributes. Now F is fully dependent, or bank name is fully dependent on bank ID. We are splitting here. So similarly, if you find one number of dependency, you have to split that relation, that number of times. So we will have a number of sub-relations to satisfy the second normal form. So this is about the second normal form. Once again, I will tell. The second normal form says the relation must satisfy, the relations must satisfy first NF, and the each and every attributes that we call non-prime attributes should fully dependent on prime attributes. So we have to split the table, or sometimes we have to compose the table to create that type of scenario to satisfy second NF. This is about second NF. Thank you.